Good morning again. Welcome back to News Center's Political Brew, here with John Richardson and Phil Harriman. Gentlemen, good to see you as always.
Good morning.
This past week, Maine moved closer to taxpayer funding for abortions. The House passed a bill requiring Maine's Medicaid program, MaineCare, and private insurance companies to pay for abortion services. Now, if this is enacted, Maine would become the 16th state to allow state taxpayer funds to be spent on abortion services. Federal funds cannot be done so. It's mostly a party line vote. Phil, this is a political fight that's been waged for decades, and maybe it never ends.
Yeah, maybe it never ends. This discussion of right to life and when does life begin is going to continue for sure. The truth is, the facts are, there's enough votes in the Democrat-controlled legislature. The governor has clearly got a track record of supporting this. I suspect it's going to pass, and she's going to sign it.
John?
I think it'll pass. I think it's time for all of us to get out of the way between a physician and the woman that makes these tough decisions for whatever reasons. And I think that that's really between the physician, and I think it's between the woman. And I think that if she needs the assistance of Medicaid to do so, then so be it. These are personal, tough decisions, and I don't think we should be playing politics with it. I think it's something that ought to be funded and let a woman decide.
Yet if the next administration is Republican, has a Republican legislature, maybe it goes away again.
It could, and that would be unfortunate, but generally what happens is these things, once these benefits are included, just like pre-existing injuries or the issue of college kids remaining on your health care, once that becomes a benefit, hard to take away.
The Senate this week okayed LD 640, which is an act to require study of greenhouse gas emissions from the proposed CMP transmission corridor. Big margin of vote, 30-4. John, what's the message to the people who are taking sides on this project with this vote in the legislature?
I think the message is they should have been watching Political Brew, because we've been saying for some time that while this is, and I think, a decent project that ought to have serious consideration, maybe even approval, it has not gotten the attention or the support of Maine people. I think largely, Phil, for the reason that it doesn't seem like there's a lot of benefit for the ratepayers. I mean, if you take the present value of the money that's being provided, it's roughly $2 million a year.
That's 40 years.
Yeah, over 40
stretch.
years, $250 million over 40 years, $2 million a year is really the present value of that. I know there's other benefits, and I've been taught, and others have provided those to me, those kinds of statistics. But I think Maine people are so darn smart. They realize they're not getting enough, and that's why there's just tremendous opposition.
You know, what occurs to me is that while they've been focusing on the regulatory process, the LURC and DEP and Public Utilities Commission, the advocates, the people who actually suit up and get on the field of how their government works, have been getting ready for this moment. And a 30-4 vote in the Senate, that's a big message to the people who want to see this pass.
That's a slapdown.
That's a slapdown. And my sources tell me that this is all now going to be about where are the numbers in the House, because if it passes in the House, this is probably going to move on down to the governor's desk. She's likely to veto it, but with this strong vote that you've just referred to in the Senate,
80%, I think the number is 80% of the people of Maine. I mean, that's a big number. How do you ignore that if you're a legislator?
Local option sales tax is something that has bubbled up a number of times over the years. Once again, mayors of Portland and other larger cities in Maine have said we really need this to help with our revenues, but it's failed in committee, so it's not likely to get very far in the legislature. Phil, is that the right call? Should this be laid to rest?
It should, absolutely. Just imagine the rim city or communities around Portland, Bangor, Lewiston, Auburn, even Freeport, a very high retail area. The small business in those communities are going to cry foul when their customers are going to go over to the next town to buy the same thing without a sales tax. It's got to be uniform.
John?
The reason we have this push for local option sales tax is because the prior governor basically said no to revenue sharing, which is you take a certain percentage of gross receipts and you give it back to cities and towns. And they have revenue sharing too, which is to give it back to service centers. These service centers, which serve, like Portland, which serve greater communities than just the city, need the monies because those services that they provide are very expensive. I hope that the legislature will reinstitute a healthy dose of revenue sharing. If they do, then no, we don't need a local option sales tax, but it really needs to go back to these cities and towns who have been really going without for a long time.
All right, our winners and losers in politics this week. Phil, we'll start with you.
Thanks. Unfortunately, my good friend, colleague, former here on Political Brew, Ethan Strimling, is my loser of the week. They had that tough vote on the paid sick leave in the city of Portland, and his first action was to go out and use the vote as a campaign tactic to raise money and put his colleagues on the defensive. Not a smart move.
You got a winner.
I do have a winner, and the winner is the about 1,000 people who turned out at the Human Resource Convention to see a live production of the Political Brew, who got a chance to learn a little bit more about how their government works.
They laughed, they cried. It was better than Cats.
It was something else, and I found out that Phil is actually funny on the stage. That was fantastic. Cory Booker, the winner of the week for me, for standing up after these shootings that take place at schools and in public settings and saying enough is enough. I really did like his message on that, and I thought that unfortunately it's President Trump again for me, and the reason I say that is because he doesn't seem to have a strategy around North Korea, a strategy around Iran, and I think those failures in strategy and the strategy with respect to trade in China, I think are really making the stock market nervous, and I think the parents of sons and daughters in harm's way very nervous as well.
All right, John, Phil, thanks very much.
Welcome.
Thank you for being with us. We'll see you next time on Political Brew. News Center is back after